This channel was first created in 2012, which means I was around 11 when I made my first video. Since then, I have been writing, editing, and producing for, I probably think, half my life, on and off. I have made a lot of videos, and deleted about 3/4 of them, because quite frankly, they were not good. And that's understandable. I was young, just wanting to create whatever came to my mind, and creating a plan for those videos was not something I did. I would make fake trailers, sketches, talk about monsters and villains in media, which is I kind of want to bring back. But it is quite funny to me that the one thing I never did let go of is me reviewing and analysing. It didn't matter what it was about, films, shows, anime, you name it, I wanted to talk about it. It was definitely one of the main genres in old school YouTube, particularly the rage reviewers, where a stylized critic character would go and ramble on about how much this piece of media sucked in a typically cartoonish and over-the-top manner. I hate to say it, but I was inspired by them. Not because it made me laugh from time to time, but because I wanted to share my own thoughts and feelings. I wanted to explain why this thing sucked and how, or why this thing was awesome and why. I could ramble on because it drew something out of me. I wanted to talk about how they invigorated or inspired me, what they wanted to show and tell you, what their themes were, and why they wanted to present it in such a way. However, I wasn't necessarily good at illustrating what I wanted to discuss, and I still don't think I'm good. I used to describe myself as a critic, but I never really understood the meaning and weight behind what that title meant. I create a sort of mystique behind it, but there are skills that are important into creating a good critique of a piece of media, and I was 11 when I made those reviews. I hadn't seen The Godfather or 2001: A Space Odyssey or any other movie that's heralded as one of the greatest films ever put on the big screen. I thought the height of filmmaking was Avengers Assemble, for crying out loud. The point is, my filmscape was very limited when I was young, but since then, I have expanded it. I own Cats on DVD now. I couldn't get past saying something was good or something was bad because I didn't have the literary intelligence to explain or analyse why. Even with my latest videos, I still wonder if they're in any way good. Did I tell you something informative and interesting, or did I just regurgitate something that someone else said in a better produced manner? Did I say something that meant worthwhile to you, or did I just waste your time? And that's why you're here, right? To not have your time wasted? These are just a few of the thoughts swirling in my head as I make a video before, during, and after, and it is infuriating. This is starting to verge on the territory of mental health, which I've done before, but, you know, I need to keep it in the subject of media criticism. And on the topic of subject... One of my friends who's proofreading this said my segues are terrible and I should take them out. No. When listening to a review of something, you may have heard the person describing their views as being entirely subjective or objective. I do think these are very interesting terms to begin with, because I feel like a lot of people misuse them to try and give their review some weight. Subjectivism, a form of relativism, is the philosophical theory that reality is all based on our isolated experiences. Like how red to me won't look like the same red to you. While in objectivism, it argues that reality exists outside the human consciousness. Now, how do these incredibly deep philosophical theories focusing on the fundamentals of reality and how we respond to reality, going on to the question what is real relate to film criticism, I shall explain. When you're being subjective, you're swaying your view to your own personal tastes, meaning there's a sense of bias when you're dictating how you feel about a film or a show you just watched, always being pulled in a particular direction, so it feels like you're not being fair, which is why some people strive to be objective when critiquing a piece of media. When they write their review or talk about their favourite movie, they believe their opinion is based in fact and fairness. That sounds good on paper, but the problem is that there is no such thing as being impartial, and there is no such thing as a correct opinion. Not really, for the most part. Being correct is not what you should be striving for in your review. All you can be is well informed enough to create an opinion that's based on the merits of the piece of media. Being subjective is not the issue when writing your review. In fact, it's necessary. A review is all about discussing whether or not what you saw, what you read, what you listened to is good or bad, and that is all based on opinion. Hell, even being impartial is technically an opinion, because that piece of media didn't sway you or even couldn't. Subjectivity is your foundation, your driving force. It's your key instinct telling you that something in this thing, whatever it may be, has enough elements that come together to create something beautiful, or that the cracks in its surface level are too hard to be ignored, but both are fueled by the passion of the opinion. It's that fire that gets you going to talk about your thing. However, being wholly subjective comes with a few setbacks. You can't be subjective without defending why that piece of media inflicts such a vitriolic response, good or bad. You can't have your review be dependent on the vibes or, you know it when you see it, which I admit is something I have struggled with from time to time. There is always something I want to share, but I could never put into proper words why I love it so much. I would love to talk about Scavenger's Reign, a recently released animated science fiction series that is just beautiful in so many ways, or the depictions of Van Gogh in Loving Vincent and At Eternity's Gate. But my fear is that I would never go deeper than, oh, the writing's great, the animation's wonderful, the acting's gorgeous, etc. You could see it in one of my old videos when talking about What We Do in the Shadows. It really just boiled down to, it's really funny, but I could never elaborate why it was. Was it the setup of the scenarios? Was it the performances from the ensemble? Was it the quality writing? Or was it all three put together? I never explained at the time, at least not well in my opinion. My fear was that the whole review would devolve into me explaining why I love it by repeating and explaining all the best jokes, because it's a film that's low on story but high on character, so a lot of the humour relies heavily on the character interactions between them. Son of a bitch, I should have just said that in the review! I wasn't really adding anything new to the discussion other than surface level examinations into a film. There will always be a piece of media that I can't explain why it's good or bad, but isn't part of a critic's job to explain why? Even to explain why something is so bad it's good, or why they like a film in spite of its flaws. When a review boils down to, trust me, it's good, why bother making a video? Why bother talking? It's certainly a hindrance to me and why I don't produce a lot for this channel as much as I'd like to. And I'll just add that to the list. Worse than being unable to detail your reasons why something is good or bad, if a person is egotistical enough to see their own subjective opinion as the correct opinion, then there's an issue. It's an unfair assessment because they treat their biases as fact. Not only that, but they sour their own reputation with this egotistical outlook on their opinions, as if they're the be-all end-all of what should be enjoyed. There's no real conformity to what is a good or bad film, and emphatically stating as though you know what is and isn't shows a really high opinion of themselves they really shouldn't have. A person has to realise that they have limits and particular palettes to what they watch and enjoy. It's not what should be enjoyed or treated as the best piece of media. I myself tend to read and watch things that have a fantastical element to them. Doctor Who, One Piece, Studio Ghibli films, BoJack Horseman. How much fantasy is in the story and setting tends to vary, but gritty, grounded, down-to-earth narratives I don't necessarily gravitate towards. This shouldn't negate any opinions I have towards heavily grounded pieces, but I shouldn't believe that Oppenheimer would have been improved if it had Godzilla in it. However, this in theory does give my opinion some weight when I do discuss either one. I'm going to use Video Game Donkey as an example. In his video about game criticism, he admits to his own biases to RPGs, finding them most to be tedious, repetitive, time-consuming, which are all understandable points. However, when he does play an RPG and genuinely enjoys them, it must mean they broke the mold. Whatever the RPG he played must be worth playing if he enjoyed them. As I said before, I tend to watch things with fantastical elements to them. If something completely grounded gives me something to talk about, like Manchester by the Sea or Yotsuba, I probably could have found a better match between those, there must have been something special for me to share, whether it be the writing, directing, acting, etc. And those aspects I mentioned, that's where I believe objective criticism lies. I briefly mentioned this. When talking about subjectivity being your passion and drive, you will need to explain and reason your opinion. And if that's the case, then your objectivity is that said reasoning and analysis. Now, it's not strictly objective criticism. Talking about these aspects can blend together. A filmmaker's style can be tailored to certain people, but there are aspects that have to meet a base standard. When you're lighting a scene, there needs to be a balance in the foreground and background. You can't have your characters under low light or for it to be too bright when they're clearly under ordinary room light. When color grading, it has to be consistent with the tone of the shot and scene, otherwise the film risks looking flat, boring, or confusingly inconsistent. Sound can honestly make or break a film. If they don't have good sound, like dialogue sounding fake in ADR or the levels being unbalanced, it distracts and disorientates the audience. Things like directing, writing, cinematography can be a little bit more nebulous, and honestly that's a discussion that folds into later chapters, but there needs to be an inherent logic to what filmmakers are doing. You can't have your characters missing in one shot and then there in the following. You can't have your script not be proofread, and you can't let me be a director ever again. Critics point them out because you deserve not to be shortchanged by what you watched. If they didn't care to sound check or proofread or direct well, then why should you bother to watch their film? Subjectivity and objectivity is not a tricky topic to understand. Okay, philosophically it is a little tricky to understand, but at a cursory glance you can gather the differences that one has. I tend to worry that I lean on the line of being too subjective for my reviews. I can be blind to a lot of faults in shows or films that I love, and it's a hard thing to admit, but you have to admit them. At that point, how can you be a reliable critic when you're in too deep to a piece of media, with all its noticeable flaws? Well, I honestly don't know if I reliably can, but there are a couple techniques that you can use to point them out. This is probably the section where I feel iffy about discussing, because these skills are something I believe I lack, but they're so integral to what makes a critic worth listening to that I had to talk about them, even if I believe I have no leg to stand on. I talked about an objective opinion, meaning that their films have to meet a base standard when being made, being lit well, having good sound, the shot isn't out of focus, etc. However, when a filmmaker knows what they're doing, breaking those rules for standard filmmaking can become artistic choices, and this is where media literacy and accurate analysis comes in. These are tools used to help understand when a filmmaker is making a mistake and when a filmmaker is making a choice. Exploring that latter question, you ask why they made that choice at all. What did it add to the overall story? Does it change or does it remain the same as the film goes on? On a surface level, you're basically using the film as your evidence, dissecting what's going on in the picture and generating meaning from their choices. A naturalistic performance creates a grounded story that you'll believe and get enveloped in. A wide shot can be used to convey a sense of size and scale. Certain editing choices can be used to manipulate the audience into thinking that a character is thinking about what they're seeing. See the Kushlov effect, because I probably butchered the meaning of that. You have to understand that everything they do in the picture is a choice. There is a reason behind the frame, and the creators of that frame want you to at least engage with the film. However, this is all based on your meaning. You as a person are different to them as a person. You are not going to have the same reading of the text, and that's absolutely fine. We as a society wouldn't progress if we all shared the same ideas, and it can almost be a fun and fascinating rabbit hole when there's wildly different but equally valid interpretations. I think everyone didn't see the original Matrix movie as an allegory for transgender identity, but given what we know about the Wachowski sisters and how they talk about it, it seems synonymous now. An issue arises when the reading and interpretation of the text can come off as, I'ma put it bluntly, wrong. There can be misinterpretations of the text, and misinterpretations instill misinformed judgment, and I am probably guilty of said misinterpretations. Listen, even though I took film studies and English literature in college, put me through countless hours of reading and interpreting novels and plays and films and shows, and half the time I was bored of those novels and plays and films and shows, causing me to miss certain sections of the novels and plays and films and shows. Well, maybe not the latter two, but you get my meaning. This can generate misinformed judgment of the product. I may have the skills to analyze, but it doesn't mean I actively utilize those skills. It's like judging a painting through a keyhole. You're limiting yourself from understanding the whole picture because you're only getting such a small section of it, not seeing how it complements the rest of the frame. And you know, sometimes you have to chalk it up to human error. I can miss a key piece of dialogue that might explain away a question or find choices the creator makes too esoteric to understand. Interpreting and critiquing art is not an easy thing that just happens. It's a skill that takes time to work and hone. It's not something that everyone can do. And believe me, I'll get to that point. One of the methods to shy away from this issue of having wildly different interpretations is by looking up the context. This can range from the context of the time it was written, the creator's personal history, the creator's social ideas and political beliefs, the context of the story's setting. A creator is not simply creating a narrative out of the blue, but it's being created out of everything they've experienced and the knowledge that they've gathered. In Dan Olson's The Nostalgia Critic and the Wall, it's an in-depth discussion of Pink Floyd's The Wall, and an infamous review of said film by Doug Walker, how it fails at being a good review and a watchable video. Olson sets up a lot of history, not just for the film, but for the filmmakers themselves, because as I stated, the creation is dictated by the creator, and the creator is dictated by the history of themselves. Comfortably Doug takes a look at Pink Floyd's The Wall, a 1982 experimental film that goes into a lot of heavy themes and subject matter such as the cruelty of 1920s school life, British society in the aftermath of the World War II, and the commodification and exploitation of art and artists, all from the experiences from Pink Floyd frontman Syd Barrett. Olson argues that the film's abstract nature can be both a positive and a negative. It allows the film to mean a lot of things in quick succession, saying what it wants to say with very powerful and evocative imagery, but over time has become cheapened, mainly from association from others trying to recapture the style that was used as a scathing commentary of society at the time, but lost in its own meaning, which really isn't its fault. Olson starts off with a well-read, informed dissection of the film as a way to verbally demean and dismantle the Nostalgia Critic's review of The Wall, a shallow recreation of the film that tries to shadow itself as a critique and analysis of The Wall. Olson points out that a lot of the critics' understanding of the film are very surface level or just downright wrong, failing to understand the choices made in The Wall and believing it to be simply a pandering Oscar bait film. There's a failure to understand the film because, as Olson puts it, he himself is incurious. He never sees so far as the sand beneath his toes, if you catch my drift. The Nostalgia Critic is very much emblematic of bad faith criticism, at least one with a large audience. Reviews and analysis that are very surface level, willful ignorance of a lot of a film's context and its story or influences, and taste that can feel overall reductive to what the film is trying to achieve. He's probably not the worst defender of these types of criticisms, but he's just so easy to talk about. The critic has never really improved his style, trapped in an arrested development since finding popularity on the internet. I do think a lot of his problems with his criticism stem from the fact that he is an entertainer first, and when trying to write a weekly comedic web series that riffs and makes fun of a movie, you tend to take liberties. Liberties on analysis, on your focus, on deeper meanings that the film is trying to say. I had a look at another review of his that took a lot of flack, Mad Max Fury Road. To summarise, he believes the film to be an adrenaline thrill ride with some of the greatest action set pieces, but short on narrative and compelling characters. When contemplating why everyone seems to praise this film as a masterpiece, the critic posits that its simple story structure is akin to a Roadrunner cartoon. High on action, low on story, but with just enough of each to keep audiences invested. That's not the worst read of the film, but is that all there is? It's a really good, extended chase sequence. There is something to merit about the film's visual storytelling, lack of drawn-out expositions, and the effective simplicity of it. Hell, I've talked about simplicity in storytelling in one of my One Piece videos, but, and not to toot my own horn, it was an admiration of how its simplicity allowed for the complexity of the world building, the characters, and what both represent within a deeper context. When the critic tries to simplify Mad Max Fury Road, it feels reductive, ignoring the deeper themes and subtext the film may or may not have. In the film, it's a journey about finding paradise, but discovering that it doesn't exist, so they have to go from the fortress they escaped from and instead make that paradise. The message and themes are glanced over in this review for his parody of the film he's reviewing, a parody that's used to showcase different responses from the film. And I do understand it to a degree. The video is asking the question why the film is heralded so highly, and to do that it needs to explore its various reactions. But because it takes a lazy comedic approach, the portrayals can come off as simplified caricatures more insulting than accurate. He does have a partner throughout this adventure, Curiosa, that represents a more balanced and positive outlook with the response, but he doesn't really internalize her points or have it add to the overall thesis. Yes, Doug is writing this, so her voice is technically his voice, but because she represents someone different, he might have taken it from discussions he's heard, not something he necessarily agrees with. The fact that it isn't clear his feelings on Fury Road, other than the generalized statements made in the beginning and end, is damning to his critiquing style. The end result is that he comes off as conceited when portraying himself as a sane voice in a myriad of malarkey, similar to the critic in The Wall, when they're both incredibly simplistic viewpoints. It's simple. It's like he writes whatever first pops into his head and then never develops or changes it. And this style, while stagnant in creativity or substance, works for him. Despite being lambasted across the board for being a part of a site that's callous to its colleague and shamed for its shallow and average critiques, he has maintained a steady viewership that doesn't seem to be declining. So why bother changing his style now? Why bother experimenting or branching out? Because it's easy. But critiquing a film shouldn't be easy. Dan Olsen's critique holds some weight because they are well-researched analysis into the respective subject matter he's discussing. I would trust his word a little more because he understands the material and has evidence to back up his arguments. I'm not saying to wholly agree with his word that Pink Floyd's The Wall is a heavy abstract piece that you need to be in the right headspace for to approach it, but his videos on them do help me cater my expectations of the film and whether or not it's going to be worth my time. And that's why you watch these videos. There are a lot of films out there and a lot of them will not meet your taste. So you either have to figure out what you'll think you'll like or find a person that you trust and allow them to inform you. And watching his video, I'll probably check out Pink Floyd's The Wall. And this is just talking about historical context. I haven't even gotten to analysing media through different film theories. Yeah, like I said, I took up film studies when I was like 16, 17, and one of the things we learned is how to analyze media through a specific film lens and/or film theory. Auteur theory, the belief that there is one sole creative force dictating the direction of film. Feminist theory, taking a look at the representation of women in contemporary media or within the context of the film that it was made. Marxist theory, taking a look at the political aspects that the film will tackle, either subtly or overtly. These are just a couple of theories that you can dissect your film through, and it's not trying to find evidence within the film to tie to those theories, it's listening and reading to other people's understanding and comparing them to your own, seeing whether or not you agree with them. This is probably getting into a deeper level than just baseline criticism of a film or a show, but you can see that there's a lot you can look into to further enhance your reading of the text. It's more than just judging if a piece of media is good or bad, it's understanding why that is, defending that statement, learning how it came to be and why that is. Media literacy and accurate analysis is incredibly beneficial to you understanding your own thoughts on a film and why they made the choices they did, whether it did those choices successfully. That is up to you, and that is why every critic is different. And I admit, I don't believe I do those things, or at least, I don't think I do those things successfully. I haven't really utilized my media literacy skills and analysis since my college and uni days, so time and money well spent, I suppose. Those videos from Dan Olsen are extensively well written, with a lot of research put into them that helps inform a lot of his opinions, and I don't know if any of my work matches a fraction of his. I worry that I might be doing too little. From my videography, you can see that they typically range from 10 to 15 minutes, my longest being 20, but that's only because I had 10 episodes to talk about. I worry that I'm not going into enough detail about why I think the product is great or why I think it's terrible, or even that I'm being too repetitive or writing too much for something that should be more succinct. I think you can tell in this video that I repeat a lot of words and phrases and that I should really invest in a thesaurus. And they've actually affected my work before. In my recent video, The Endearing Charm of Yotsuba, I was halfway through editing before I realized, oh god, it's terrible, and then I shoved it in the recycling bin. And while I'm actually grateful I made that choice, resulting in a better scripted video, I was just content, not elated or anything like that after making it. More to the point, there's this nagging at the back of my head wondering, does this video matter? I don't know if I'm just regurgitating something I've heard before or something you've heard before and I'm just another pointless voice in an echo chamber. Again, bordering on a lot of mental issues that I harbor, but the point still stands about my existential crisis on making videos. I am still a voice among millions, and I will constantly worry whether or not it's worth listening to. The only consolation I have when thinking about this is that I know that there are a lot more worse voices to listen to. I must preface that this portion of the video is going to be more of a rant-based observation that I've noticed in my 20+ years of being chronically online. So this might just be me going off on something that pertains to only a small percentage of the internet. And that the whole is not really what I believe. And I do hope that's the case. I really do. Because believe you me, when I say that some of you really, genuinely, wholeheartedly have no idea what the fuck you are talking about. I have seen some of the most brain-dead takes, read some of the most mind-boggling opinions, tried to make sense out some of the stupidest, asinine, vapid, dense, inane, insane, ignorant, imbecilic nonsense I have ever heard in my life. I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, and my critiques leave something to be desired. But they are a far cry from being half the shit-stained takes left on the walls of the internet. You know that phrase, everyone's a critic? It's used to shrug off criticism for creators, to get them to move past their comments and focus on their next piece of work. There is some truth to that statement. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. They are the ones that take time from their lives and money from their pockets to experience what they want to see. They want to be entertained or to think, and sometimes both. And they want it to be done well. Time is a precious thing. We all have a finite amount of time left on this earth. Some of it is used for sleep, some of it is used to become an industrial mechanical cog in the late stage capitalist system that is going to eat our souls inside out, and some of it is going to be spent trying to enjoy our time here. Now, of course, not everything is going to work out, and you might find a dud here or there, which is absolutely understandable. And you might even share your thoughts about it, trying to piece together why this didn't really connect with you, in a calm and amicable manner. Those aren't the people I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about every single piece of shit, hyperbolic sack of crap, thoughtless, senseless morning that thinks their opinion is the be-all end-all. And how do I know some of these people don't know what they're talking about? What have I been talking about for however long this video is? Some people constantly misuse or ignore techniques I've been exploring. Like understanding the context, reading between the lines, or watching the goddamn movie. I'm not saying that having an in-depth discussion on the piece of media makes a person and their opinion worth listening to, but it is easier to see a person's lack of understanding of what they're talking about. Some people think that Batman vs Superman is a really good film. Some people didn't understand The Green Knight. Some people think Paddington 2 was bad. And they're wrong, and they're currently proofreading the script.
You little shit.
Yeah! To use an analogy from Noodle, a funny and talented animator, it's like a gourmet chef telling you that you shouldn't eat their steak with a store-brand ketchup or something, and you are fervently arguing that your way is the best way. At that point, it's not a matter of different tastes. He has studied and trained the culinary arts and probably has a tighter and more heightened palate. I'm not going to ignore his advice when it comes to cooking. He knows what he's doing better than I do. You went to his restaurant and you want to pour water on your goddamn steak? This is a video where he addresses some comments left on his video talking about interpolation of 24-frame sequences into a 60-framed animation sequences, and I don't understand how you find those videos good. They melt into each other, they screw up the pacing of the animation, and they just look ugly. Some people are just incorrect about certain things. I feel comfortable saying that as an objective fact. Sometimes overt messages that should be clear are dashed away because of a person's weird connection to the piece. It's a bit like how a lot of men connected to the character Rorschach from The Watchmen, an overly paranoid absolutist superhero. This was meant to be a critical look at the way superheroes were written at the time in absolutism, but some of them took it as a super cool looking dude who was fighting against a corrupt system and fighting for truth and ignoring all the other stuff. This is not the first time people have connected to a character and story despite it being critical of what they were representing. Starship Troopers, American Psycho, Breaking Bad. It becomes a grey area, asking whether or not it's the people at fault for having an incorrect interpretation of the piece, or the creator for not being overt enough in their text with their messages. But for the moment, it's the consumer. To use another example, Rotten Tomatoes. It's gotten some ridicule over the years for not being a trustworthy source of film judgment. Sometimes they rate a film highly when audiences didn't like it, sometimes they besmirch a film when it seems like audiences found the film enjoyable. And their system can get a little difficult to understand. See, the way their rating system works is by collecting critics from different publications to come up with an overall consensus. This does not, however, show how good that said film is. Not all films are created equals, and this is where the rating system can be nebulous. It's judging how likely you are to enjoy a film, not how good the film is. If they included like an average star rating or something to that effect, it might make more sense. Maybe people would get up their back a little bit, but I'm the forgiving sort. Look, I haven't seen every film. Hell, I haven't seen the films that are apparently essential to be watched, but I feel comfortable in saying I've watched a wide variety of films. More than the average person, at least. A critic has seen 100 times more than that, more than me. It's their job. Over time, movies become the same. They have the same story beats, the same kind of characters, the same type of narrative over and over. So when they rate something highly, it means that, like I said with Video Game Donkey, that they broke the mold. It tried something new, something interesting, something original, and that it's worth watching. Maybe not to your taste, but it will stick with you. And that is a moment worth taking. Maybe watching too many movies creates a divide in how they review, and that could be a legitimate argument, but vice versa. Why should I listen to you when you've seen so few films? Why should I listen to you when your knowledge of films is about as deep as a kiddie pool? Rotten Tomatoes is not a perfect system, but it is way better than the audience rating system, because quite frankly, audiences do not know how to score. I use the word hyperbolic very aptly here. There is a whole row of numbers that a film can be scaled to, and like 90% of you use the bottom two or top two. Rarely is there ever an in-between. Half the time it's down to review bombing out of sexist or racist beliefs. Other times it's because y'all don't know the meaning of the word nuance. I'ma chalk this up to a symptom of internet culture. The veil of anonymity that the internet provides, and the need to find a community within that veil, cultivates an echo chamber that feeds off each other, building each other up and reinforcing their beliefs, making themselves so sure that they know what's right and that they're right. Now, this has created a plethora of issues in our current generation and how we approach socio-political topics, which will lead to an inevitable downfall, but I want to talk about how that affects film criticism. There is no discussion anymore. There is no understanding each other. There is only, I'm right and you're wrong, and may the Lord have mercy if you're wrong. Because of a sort of internet shaming ritual that the social media loves to do every once in a while. No, I'm not talking about cancel culture. That's a whole different subject. That's definitely not in my wheelhouse. When someone speaks out their opinion, more importantly one that doesn't fit in, there would be a vitriolic negative response to such an idea. This would go one of two ways. A person would double down with their own negative reaction, name-calling would ensue, and IQs would get lower. The other way is that the original commenter find themselves alone and isolated until they find an aforementioned echo chamber where they can freely be themselves. That sounds good at first, but like I said, you aren't growing or learning or understanding. You're in a cycle of regurgitated ideas that don't get developed or expanded upon. I think the worst kind of opinions I see are ones where people say that you're thinking too hard into this piece of media. The notion that you shouldn't look deeper into a film's themes and messages and just appreciate it at a surface level for what it is. A form of anti-intellectualism. And I mean, do I even have to explain how stupid that is? Do I even have to elaborate how forcing yourself to be a brain-dead husk of a consumer is not a good thing? How hollow a feeling it is? How it slowly eats inside you like a parasite? Stripping away all thought and opinion, force-fed media like a fucking baby? An absolute absence of critical thinking? What is your brain for then, you spineless ass? The curtains were just blue, ass motherfucker! Is thinking too complicated for your smoothed-out lump of flesh in your head to conjure? You might as well be watching a Cocomelon video if that's your view of art and media, you absolute subhuman piece of human garbage! I think this aspect of anti-intellectualism stems from a pride thing, feeling like you're being talked down to or being treated like a child. You absolute subhuman piece of human garbage! Yeah, that really didn't help matters, did it? Maybe if I say no offense at the end of it. But the notion that you shouldn't think or understand or reason is baffling. It's not only insulting to the creators of that thing you like, it's also insulting your own intelligence. Listen, I'm not saying that The Tiger That Came for Tea has any deep philosophical subtext embedded in its writing or art style, and sometimes it's okay to turn off your brain when watching a movie, not thinking about how Godzilla shoots a laser into the center of the earth or the logistics of a helicarrier in the real world. Not everything is designed to make you think, and instead they just want you to have fun, but to discredit those that want you to think, that want you to read between the lines, that want you to explore and implore, and so much more. As I said, it's insulting. Art is not just entertainment. It's an extension and expression of the world around us. It's a brief glimpse into the past and a statement for the future. To reduce art of any medium, in any function, down to a passing convenient benefit for your fleeting pleasure as a maudlin distraction for your own sad, piss-poor, pathetic life. What else is there to say? Like I said before, these are just broad strokes of observations from various social media platforms that I'm a part of, like Reddit, or Tumblr, or Instagram, or Twitter. You know, the 4 main social media platforms. Look, much like the commenters I'm talking about, I'm probably being hyperbolic, mainly because of comedic effect, but also because it underlines a lot more serious problems that I oh so subtly try to bring up. There are a lot of fascinating discussions that I could be having, a lot of interesting interpretations of art and media that we should share and explore, and I want to do all of those things. I just wish I didn't feel like I was in fact one of those stupid commenters I was talking about. When I had the idea for this video, it started out as a reflective piece on my skills as a media critic and an analyst, trying to figure out what I was doing in my videos and how I can improve upon them. And like most of my content, it sent me down an existential spiral about my talents and skills. There are a million voices echoing out their opinion in a vast virtual void, hoping someone will listen, and I don't know if my voice is worth listening to. There's a lot that goes into being a critic, or even someone with an opinion and a passion to share that opinion. I don't know how well I hold my own opinions. They're so easily swayed and changeable depending on who I listen to. Hell, I was very much afraid of looking up other people's videos that delve into bad media criticism or bad faith criticism, because it felt like I would be stealing their work if I knew I couldn't expand upon it or use it as an example. As an example, Marvel's Doctor Strange. When I first watched it, it was a pretty standard MCU film to me. I didn't hate it, as the performances were great and there were some interesting ideas and themes about letting go and death as a natural part of life, but the story didn't wow me and the villain wasn't that captivating. Again, a pretty standard MCU film. Then I watched overly sarcastic productions' detailed diatribe of Doctor Strange, focusing on his character journey in a much more interesting way than I gave the film credit for, starting off as a selfish, arrogant prick, but with more hidden depth upon rewatch, ending with him not a better man, but a humbled human that's willing to grow and evolve. It gave me a much more positive outlook on a film that I didn't really think much of. It was a well-expanded breakdown of the scene into the core progression of the character. It captivated me long enough to reconsider my opinion of the film, and maybe I'll actually rewatch it when... It captivated me enough to reconsider my opinion of the film, and maybe I'll rewatch it when I find time and care. But the point still stands. How can I trust my own opinions when it's so easily changeable? I swear, I think Morbius was good if he gave me a long-winded video essay explaining why. What right do I have that my opinions hold any weight to anyone? Why should I continue making videos on this channel? Well, what weight do any reviews hold? Inverse to how important my views and opinions are, every single voice is. When none are important, all of them are. Every single person's personal point of view holds some weight and importance. It's a genuine joy when I get to exchange different ideas and viewpoints on something that we either both love, hate, or feel completely the opposite with each other. I've had others tell me that my videos have got them to check out that film or show, and it's honestly really lovely that my opinion meant something. This video made me rethink how I do things. Recently, my Yacht Super video, but with this one I've taken precautions to make sure that the script is as good as it gets. I redrafted, researched, and I've had some proofreaders try to help either correct or improve the script to see if I'm just making sense or if I'm just waffling. And they are so... It's so brutal. You have no idea. Like someone would steel toe its kicking an innocent puppy.
I said I liked it. I liked the majority of what you had.
It was just awful. Like stripping innocence from a child who still believes there's magic in the world. Gut punch after gut punch, an endless barrage of ways to put me down.
A few tweaks. You're blowing this out of proportion. You asked for my help.
I asked for your support.
And I gave you my support. You asked for me to be brutal. You asked.
A critic's job overall is not to be the final say if a piece of media was good or bad. Every person is different, and it's near impossible to cater a product to every single person. A critic's job should be to present a new perspective and inspire a rewatch with that new lease of life. They should make you think about a film or a show or anything else that you enjoy in a new and interesting way. They should make you appreciate that piece of media and highlight the quality and care and devotion the filmmakers poured into their hearts. And maybe I don't do that in my work often. Maybe I'm not the critic I want to be, but I don't think that should stop me. So, why do I still talk? Hope. If I didn't have any hope left in my body, I probably wouldn't be here.
Jesus Christ.
I meant on YouTube, dickhead. Why do I still talk? Because I like making videos on YouTube. Why do I still talk? Because I'm not a critic. I'm just a guy that likes a lot of things, trying to understand why.